So good afternoon, everyone. This is Shudipto Shaha from Regional Science Center, Bhubaneswar, and today we are here for our Mega Digital Science Festival 2020. We have with us Dr. Iksha Jain. Today's session themed Synthesizing Art from Science. This is a program in collaboration with Odisha Vigyan Academy. We at Regional Science Center, Bhubaneswar, is disseminating science to the common people of Odisha since 1989. And during this COVID pandemic situation, we have shifted to this online mode. And today's program is a continuation of that reach. So without further delay, I will hand over the proceeding to Dr. Jain. She will take over the chat. Yes, Dr. Jain.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. So first let me thank you for inviting me here and giving me a place to speak. And I have never been to Odisha, and it's nice to interact with people from Odisha via the digital media, and I hope to visit there someday. For now, this will do. Um, Today, the story that I'm going to tell is about that of color, and I'll share my reasons as to why I'm talking about color. So, just introducing myself very briefly. So, I'm someone who trained to be a scientist. I was at IISc, and after finishing my graduate program, I realized that I am more interested in communicating science, and that's how I started drawing stories of science and sharing them around. Just give me so this is like a brief sample of some things that I have done. And for 2 years, I was part of this lab at this institute called Institute for Stem Cell and Regenerative Medicine in STEM at Bangalore, where the work I did was to try and create a popular science book for the audience to tell them the story of color. And what I'm going to do today is give you all a brief glimpse into what are the kind of stories that I'm sharing in the book and what is the kind of art I have developed for it. So please feel free to interrupt if you want to ask me something at any point of time, and I will try to answer them to the best of my capacity. Also, note that I am myself not a scientist who has worked on color directly. This is based on reading the literature out there that relates to animal color. So, if I say a color, if I ask you your favorite color, you probably have something in mind, and that is specific to you. You like that particular blue and you like that particular green, and it's a part in some ways of your identity. Similarly, color is also a part of identity for a lot of animals. If you look around yourself, or if at the image on the screen, you will see that there are animals across the whole color spectrum. There are animals that are dark in color. There are animals that are actually transparent. There are animals which are in the red, yellow, orange spectrum. There are animals which are in the blue, green spectrum, and there are certain colors which are dull. Um, and all of these colors for these animals may or may not have a meaning, and we will try to look at some of those stories today. Uh, we have words, but animals don't. So some animals tend to use colors apart from their other behaviors as a way to communicate with each other. So, what do we need to have color? Whether it's the paint books that we use, or it's our own skin, or the skin of any animal, what we need is a source of color. So, here, this is a place where I talk about the theory of color. If somebody has a curious question, they can ask me. but I'm just going to talk about the part which says color. So if you see that different pigments, if they come together, they make a new color which has information from both the colors. So red and cyan make something like green, magenta and yellow make something like red. So so this is a property that the animal kingdom has exploited to build a variety of colors. And when we think of colors, if you look at the bottom, you will see that there can be several shades of green, or there can be colors which are blue and green, though they are different colors, they're close to each other. And if you look at that green and red, they are just really far apart from each other. So if you look at the image in the center, that's the color wheel, and that gives you an approximation of what colors are close to each other and what colors are far away from each other. So even if you take your poster color box and try to do this exercise, there is very high likelihood that you will end up with a color wheel like this. If you start with yellow, blue, and red, and try to mix each color with each other, right? So we have a source of color, and the next thing we need is light. So a color will not, it cannot be seen if there is no light. In dark, colors have no meaning. And this is important in animal kingdom too. If I am very colorful but I'm walking around in the dark, no one will be able to see the colors that are on me. So, light has several properties that are used in different ways by the animal kingdom as well. But the one that we need to pay attention to is the filtration. So, if you see the second most at the bottom, the one where we have a yellow filter, what happens there is that this is the this is a pigment. So when light from sun, a white light falls on it, some of it is absorbed by the pigment and some of it is reflected. And the color that is absorbed by the light is usually the color of the pigment itself. So if you know that white light composes of all these colors from Vibgyor, the violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red, what is happening if a pigment is of yellow color, it will absorb the yellow color and reflect rest of the spectrum. And this is how pigments work inside the skins of the animals. And the next thing we need for color is to be seen. While we need the light to see it, we also need an observer, a receiver to notice those colors. And for most animals, it's the eyes. There are some other animals where there are possibly other ways to sense light, like the planarias and some other worms. They have sensors on their body where they can just differentiate whether it's light or dark, or maybe some difference in color too. But for the most part, it's the eyes that tell us the information of color, and our brains have also simultaneously evolved to process that information. Humans, for example, can compute most of the data for red, green, and blue. Yeah. So, so we need three things: the source of light, the light if again a peacock is dancing and there is no one to observe it, that dance has no meaning. So where is this color found? So in most animals, it's the outer covering of the animals that possesses the color. And even if it's a part that's folded up, when the color needs to communicate, they expose that part. For example, there are certain birds which have a lot of markings on their underside. It's their color on the underbelly, and they have to lift themselves up to display the color that they mean to show. So the skin has these tiny, we'll call them placeholders, we call them parcels called the cells. There are some special cells called the melanocytes in humans where there are these dark pigments inside. And in the animal kingdom, there are only very few kinds of pigments. There is something in the red range, there's something in the yellow range, and there's something in the orange range, and there's something in the brown range. There is no blue pigment, there is no green pigment, and that's a question for you to find out as to where the blue and the green color comes from. Um, if you want, we can discuss that little late at the end of the talk if you finish in time for a healthy Q&A section. Right. Um, so I will give you two stories today. One which is about the color of love. So a lot of animals use color to attract their mates. You can see that in the colorful feathers of birds, the spots on fishes, and and like I mentioned, there are certain lizards which have their underbelly painted. There are certain frogs which have their underbelly painted, colored to attract a mate. And what is in the examples that are presented here, the idea is that their behavior changes. So if the peacock needs to express that it is ready for mating, it will dance and expose all these feathers. If the lizard wants to express that it is looking for a mate, then it will raise itself up to expose its underbelly. So these are behavioral changes, but there are some other interesting stories as well, where what happens is the color itself changes. So the posture may or may not change, but it's the color itself of the animal that changes. For example, here there is a chitlet fish, um, and if this happens to see a mate, so we'll see what happens. But before that, the skin of this fish is built in scales. If some of you eat fish, you might have noticed scales, which are things that like our nails that you can pull out from fish's body. And so this is a scale that we have taken out from a fish, not a chitsled. And you can see these black spots, and these black spots are one single parcel, one single cell that contains a black pigment. Oh, sorry. Oops. So in this fish, the scales have red pigment, but in the fish that I worked on, I was able to find and work on that had these black pigments. And you probably also these can see these shiny spots within them, and those are a different kind of cells which are more closely related to how blue and green comes, in some animals. So what can we see with this scale? Let me just see if this plays. Yeah, just observe it for a second. So can anyone make a guess as to what happens here? Anyone wants to guess?
Ma'am, can you repeat?
So you see the behavior here, right? Like something is changing. There are large black dots and suddenly they disappear. So what is happening here?
The color
Ma'am,
changes.
Yes. And
the black pigment in this is decreasing.
okay, is the pigment decreasing? Okay, that's one way.
Which can cause the color to change.
Yes, it will cause the color to change, yes. But like what is happening here, if you have a guess about that? Any more
It
guesses?
might be moving its parts so that the darker places can be like shown, can be seen, to be exact.
Okay, interesting, yes. Anyone else would like to share? Oh, just a second. I don't know how to add somebody while I'm trying to screen share. Do I have to stop myself? Is that how this works?
Madam,
Hmm.
uh, if you find problem, actually you can continue, but make a second host.
Oh, and can I share and make you host? Let me just see.
Regional Science Center.
No, that make host. Yeah.
Yes. So that I am doing, then you can continue.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So we were trying to discuss how what might be happening here. Right. So somebody said that the pigment is decreasing. Any other guesses? So remember I told you that this is a cell which has all the black pigment here. Here it's black,
Yes,
it could
ma'am.
have been red. So can you now think of something else that might be happening?
Ma'am, ma'am, it has been changing the structure.
So
Ma'am,
structural
it is
change. Yeah. Structure can change, amount can change, pigment
Miss,
can get.
I think it is
Yes,
the
ma'am.
light is changing, so the light reflected on that one week is changing, so we can see another thing. For that reason, I think it can be reflection of light.
Mm-hmm. You're right. But what I'm trying to ask is, what's happening here? Like, how is it coming together like this? The pigment, is it coming together or is it getting destroyed? Or is the cell dying? That parcel of color is dying. What is happening?
Ma'am, it might be changing its shapes
It is changing its
so that the
shape.
light, so the lights.
Structural color, interference of
Structure.
light.
Yeah, structure curve is also a possibility, but I'm glad that you know about this. I wasn't planning to talk about it, but maybe we can.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
The parcel of color is changing
But changing how? That
due
was
to
the
the
question.
falling of the light and the reflecting to our eyes.
So there is a cause and there is a consequence. So the the change here in this particular case, let's see what's happening. Maybe uh, do you see what's happening here? So this is the opposite of the previous slide. So what is happening here is that so like a lot of you mentioned that maybe the structure of the cell itself can change, the cell can die, the amount of pigment can change, the pigment can get destroyed, or the shape of the cell itself can change. So while in this particular case a specific thing happens, but all of these things are actually used employed by different animals that change color. So it's easy for us to guess, I guess. So what is happening here, I'll reveal now. So this is how a cross section of a scale would look like. So for example, if this is the fish and if I were to slice a particular part of the skin in like this dimension, then and look under the microscope, this is the kind of view I will see. So this gray part you see, that actually means the scale that you will actually pull out. And you see these yellow cells here. So now I'm talking about my chichlid. So these yellow cells right now, you see how they are. And if I zoom in on them, this is how they look. And but once something changes, when it spots a mate, this happens. So what's the difference between here and here? Anyone wants to?
Good afternoon, madam. Excuse me. I think some light sensitive receptors, cells receptors are there. So they are receiving the different colors and accordingly the pattern changes.
Right. So what is happening here is the pattern is changing. So this yellow thing is one cell and all the pigment initially is all concentrated in the center. So the surface area on which pigment is available is low. And just as it spots its mate, the position of these pigments that were all clumped together in the center changes. Now the color is spread throughout. Imagine if you drop an ink in water, of course not as fluid because these are also kept in small packets. There are these small pouches, so these pouches get distributed throughout. And because now what has happened is that if only this a small dot was colored with pigment, now a large surface area is colored with pigment. Excellent, thanks for whoever is annotating. And uh, so is there a way that I can do that too? I can't figure that out. So what was I saying? Color intensity increases. Now there is more surface area with pigment. So when the light falls on this, the the color that is reflected is now darker, and the fish looks something like this. So by changing how the color is spread across the cell, you can go from a state like this to a state like this. Now, my question to you is, has anyone else seen or read or thought about any other animal where a change like this happens, where an animal changes its color?
Ma'am, chameleon.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, they do that when they're scared.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? I couldn't hear you very clearly. Sorry.
They change their color to camouflage with their like
Yeah.
background when they're scared.
Yes, yes, yes.
Ma'am, I have seen some butterflies that do that.
Hmm. So, does anyone
Ma'am,
know?
they change the
Morpho
color of their
butterfly.
wings, ma'am.
Huh,
Morpho butterfly.
some butterfly,
Octopus,
octopus, okay, uh,
cuttlefish,
cuttlefish, yes.
certain butterflies also.
Hmm. So,
Lizards,
yeah, does anyone know how butterflies change their color? Do you think the same thing is happening there, what we saw with the scale?
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm?
Ma'am, the scales are changing their position, ma'am, so that the lights reflected on them are changed.
Okay, yes, the scales, when they fly, the scales change their angle with respect to light. But is it this pigment redistribution that's happening there?
No, ma'am.
Anyone knows how that works? No one? Okay, somebody asked me that question again later. I'll tell you the answer. Now we'll talk about the color of deceit. So somebody mentioned octopus, so that's what we will talk about. So apart from meeting the other, there are several other contexts where color is used, and one of them is deceit. So there are several a green caterpillar on the leaf is trying to hide itself from its predators, whereas an octopus hiding in the vegetation is hiding so that it can catch its prey unaware. Right. So, what is cool about octopuses? Uh, when they are of paler color or they're matching with their background, they mostly try to match with their background. When they're matching their background, they look like tiny things. And when they're trying to scare their prey, they change their posture and color in such a way that they appear very large, larger than they are. So they not only fool in terms of color, they not only fool in terms of their posture, but they also fool in terms of how big they look. So the way they change their skin, they also are changing how large or small they appear. Now, anyone would like to guess or contemplate again on how our octopuses, I'm not sure if it's octopuses, how are octopus change achieving this color change? Anyone has read about it or has thought about it, wants to take a guess about it?
Ma'am, they might be changing their skin structure, ma'am.
Skin
Ma'am,
structure.
they look stone. Ma'am, sometimes they were following a fish, and sometimes they look like a rock. Ma'am, they hide in the rocks and completely look like a rock. Ma'am.
Hmm. Yes, they do something, change something in their skin.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other guesses?
They change their color when they see the other animals, and due to their the skins were connected to their nerve, which signals to the brain, and that make them to change the color, help them.
Okay, yes, here nervous system is involved, which is different from the fish. Maybe we can also talk about that later. Yes. Uh, any other answers or guesses rather?
Ma'am, spreading of pigment.
Spreading of pigment. Yes, it is the spreading of pigment. But let's see how that happens. So here, the mechanism is very different from how it works in the fish. So they have these really large and very interesting cells. And how and why they are interesting is that these cells are literally elastic. So what happens is when they change their shape, they are also changing. The muscles are contracting and relaxing to change the shape. And in that process, there are also some other special muscles which are meant only for these elastic cells. And if the muscles are relaxed, the cell looks maybe something like this. And when the muscles contract, the cell looks something like this. So now again imagine that from a ball, it has become a disc. So the surface area on which the pigment blocks the light increases. So now it will appear darker as opposed to before. So here again what is changing is the pigment distribution, but there the cell wasn't plastic. There the pigment granules were moving from the center to the edge of the cell and redistributing themselves. Here the cell itself is changing shape. There the cell shape did not change. Sorry. So here the cell shape did not change. Uh, does anyone want to ask anything at this point of time?
Ma'am,
Hmm.
ma'am, squids or octopuses, they have the similar kind of mechanism, ma'am, to change their shape.
So there are two things that happen both in octopus and squid. This is one of the mechanisms, and the other thing has to do with the structural colors. So I didn't really prepare my presentation to talk about structural colors, but I have a hint of the structural cell here. So if you see this blue cell at the bottom, and you see these white lines arranged in a different manner. So what happens is that light hits these white things, and these white things are reflective in nature. So which means that if light bounces on them, the light will come away. And more often than not, these essentially act like mirrors. They're not perfect mirrors, but they act like mirrors. And what happens in squids and octopuses, the gap between these mirror-like structure changes. And as the gap changes, because what happens is that once light comes in, it reflects, then it hits another mirror. So there is a lot of internal reflection happening. And in that process, what emerges is different. So that is what leads to change of that green or blue in a squid, that cuttlefish that you might have seen online. That's what's happening. The distance between these white panels is changing, and because of which the light that comes out after total internal and not total internal, after internal reflection is changing. Yeah. Anyone else has any question? I thought I heard something. Okay. And the colors in butterfly are also similar. So here we had these structures within the cell. In squids, they are in the cell. In fish, they are in the cell. In some frogs, they are in the cell. you can see that here also in this image. The shiny spots that you see are those tiny cells which have these reflective mirror-like things inside them. And if you carefully look for the spots and dots, you will see some things which are reflecting orange and red, and something which are reflecting blue or green. So based on how they are arranged, like if the cell is arranged all parallel, they will look different. But if the cells, one cell has a particular angle and another cell is at a different angle, then again the light they reflect will be very different. And that is kind of the way the butterfly scales also change color. So they are all arranged in a very specific arrangement. But if the angle of the light that falls on it, the instant angle of incident light changes, then the color that comes to your eye changes. So in butterfly particularly, it's about where the receiver is, like where are you, the eyes who are looking at it. So if you change your position slightly even, the, uh, the reflections that you're catching are different from what you're catching here. So because that's happening because the light is scattered at different angles. So the red is scattered at a different angle, the blue is reflected at a different angle, the green is reflected at a different angle. And by changing your eye, position of your head or eye, you are changing what you collect. Right. Now, let's talk about chameleon. Does anybody want to tell me about chameleon? Like, what do they know about the color change in chameleon? Am I audible? Can people hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Hmm. No one knows about chameleon?
Ma'am,
Hmm.
I think if the chameleon feels that he is in danger, then he changes its color so he can't be the prey of someone.
Hmm. Okay.
Ma'am, this changes color to regulate their body temperature also.
Hmm. Yes, they do that. Anyone else?
Response to light sensitive. It
Sorry, can you speak again, ma'am?
means some extraneous light, if it will attract, means it will fall under chameleon. So accordingly that it changes.
Okay. Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah. So, has anyone seen a chameleon changing color? Like, have you seen what color it changes into?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have seen.
Hmm. What did your what were the changes that you saw?
Ma'am, me too.
No, no. Huh, yes, great.
I
But like, did it change from red to black, from orange to purple, from
Ma'am, I
what?
saw from
Ma'am,
orange
I
to
have seen.
green.
Sorry. Two people spoke at the same time, one by one. Swastik, maybe you can go first.
Ma'am, I saw from orange to green. I saw.
Okay. Anyone else?
Ma'am, I have seen the chameleon to change the from green color to woody color, ma'am. Ma'am, brown.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Hmm.
I saw the chameleon changing its color from brown to gray.
Brown to gray. Okay. That's interesting.
Actually, madam, in our Odisha,
Hmm.
in Kapila's area, forest area, so big type of chameleon also visible. That is woody color, gray color. But when we touch it, no, so they coil and just turn to green color. I handle
Nice.
also.
Oh, nice. Nice. Hmm. So, uh, so there are two things that chameleon do to when they're trying to change color. One is they are either trying to protect themselves, which is a rarer behavior, but mostly they are trying to exert aggression. If they want to say, I'm really strong and I can fight you, is when they usually change color. This idea that they are using that to blend in the background so that other things don't see them, that is actually a misconception. They are mostly changing that color to say, I can fight you, and to exert power. And this behavior, more often than not, is commonly seen when there are two males around. So if there are two male chameleons around and they want to mate with one chameleon female, they they fight each other with the use of color. So they go from the colors from the blue green spectrum to the colors in the yellow and orange spectrum. And all the chameleons that change color cannot change to any color. So in popular media, you might have seen a lot of movies where the chameleon just becomes the color of the wall or the texture of the wall, and that is not at all how it works. So for each chameleon, type of chameleon, it's inherent behavior. They can either change from orange to green or from woody to gray, just as I learned today. And so it's not like that they can cover the whole spectrum. So there are some chameleons which can cover a wide spectrum, but there is a very defined range. It's not like it will become purple. Any chameleon can become purple. So that does not happen. Any questions you have so far?
Ma'am,
Tell me.
just as ma'am, that chameleons also change their color to regulate their body temperature. Is it true, ma'am?
Yes, it is true. So, not all chameleons or animals change their color to regulate body temperature, but it's seen in some chameleon and a lot of lizards, in fact, that change their body temperature, that change their color to manage their body temperature. Can anyone take a guess why? If you know that black absorbs heat and white
Yeah.
reflects, uh,
Ma'am, the
and white,
ma'am, heat and light.
yeah, heat and light. So you can make a guess as to how um, having a darker skin might help in which weather.
It
Ma'am,
helps
winter.
creatures
Hmm.
keep
Yeah.
them warm.
Yes. Yes. So some lizards and some chameleons, yeah, that related, closely related. So they use some frogs, in fact, even they use body color as a way to regulate temperature. Right. So I just want to go back to that nervous system and hormone discussion. So the changes that we saw in the octopus and the changes that we saw in the cell, this has been closely regulated by nerves. So in fact, it's not very clear here, but the red line that you see at the bottom of this muscle, that's actually a nerve. So this so that's why the changes that happen in the octopus are really fast. There is direct signal coming from the nerve telling the muscle what to do, and that now it's time to contract or now you must relax, and that just changes the way the pigment is distributed. But if we go to uh, our fish, so now what's happening in the fish is that it is dependent on hormones. So some gland in the body is releasing hormones, which then travel through the blood system to the cells on the skin, and then tells them that hey, it's time to distribute your pigment throughout the cell, or hey, it's time to bring them back to their original state. So, so, so these changes are a little slower than what you would see in something that is being affected by direct nervous system connections. Right. So this is all the science that I wanted to share today. So I'm happy to take questions, and if there is time, I would like you to quickly draw for me. If you can quickly draw what's your favorite microscopic view, that'll be nice. If you have pen and pencil around you, and it will take you a short time. Meanwhile, if somebody wants to ask a question, please do.
Ma'am,
Tell me
uh,
from Jyoti.
you were telling that butterflies change color as well. So how do they do that?
Yeah, so I discussed this briefly. So butterflies, in some sense, are not changing color. What is changing is what you see. So what happens is that butterfly scales also have these reflective mirror-like arrangements. It does not look like this. It's very different. And so the light that comes to and hit those mirror-like structures gets scattered and reflected in various ways. So maybe the red is going here, the green is going there, the blue is going there. So as either the level of the wing changes, the position of the wing changes, or the position of the viewer changes, that light that comes to the observer changes. Does that make sense? You
Yeah.
can, yeah. So if you see at the bottommost panel here, there is a rough surface and you see the light is going everywhere from it. So this is called scattering. So butterfly wings usually employ a combination of reflection, scattering, and even interference to amplify certain colors and reduce certain colors. And as you change the position, what is getting reflected or what is getting scattered changes. Yeah.
All right.
Right. Anyone has seen any other animals around them changing colors? You can share that also. And so these changes that I spoke about were like really quick changes, which happen within a minute or a few minutes. But there are certain changes like the thermal regulation that somebody mentioned. They actually happen slowly. So it's like when the winter is approaching, they'll start to become darker. There are certain birds which change their color seasonally. In some weathers, they are white, bright white, and as their breeding season comes, they become more red or pink in color. Do you know? Can anyone tell me what's the approximate comparable phenomena in humans? Like, where do we change colors?
Hair,
Hair, okay.
skin,
Hmm.
Ma'am, iris.
How in skin?
ma'am.
In skin, when do you see that color change? Like, when does that happen?
Ma'am, when the summer season start, we become darker, ma'am, due to melanin.
Hmm. So it's exposure to sun that makes you tanned. So that is
Yes, ma'am.
to protect yourself from UV. You generate more melanin. Yeah. Anything else? Something that's more quicker.
Anger,
Anger or blushing.
cha.
Yeah. So can you tell me why the color is changing then in humans? And this kind of phenomenon is seen in some other animals also, some monkeys and baboons.
The
And because ma'am, they want to show the other monkeys or other animals too. They are very furious
Hmm.
and they are very
Hmm.
furious and very
Hmm. Yeah. No, that is behaviorally, but like what happens in the body, like what is happening here in my cheeks when I blush or I become angry.
the
ma'am, due to blood, ma'am.
Hmm.
the blood pressure
So
increases, and so the supply of blood to the cells and the tissues also increase, and the skin changes. Not really changes. It gets a reddish tinge.
yes. So it's true for a lot of other animals also, actually. So in like we saw that, so there are some parts where there are pigment cells, but there are other regions, like if you look at the microscopic cell, which is not filled with pigmented cells, which means that rest of this region is slightly clear. Like if there is something colored below it, that will also be like some light will pass through this clear region, which is in the middle where you don't see any blood vessels, you don't see any melanocytes, and so some light will pass through it. So if in the depth there, like in not too deep, but like if in this area there are some blood vessels, that will become a part of the color that's reflected because the light is reaching them, reaching those cells, and it's being reflected by them. So when we blush, or when even a monkey blushes or is trying to flash its lips, when they're angry, they make this flashing face and their lips become redder than usual. So what is happening there is that the blood, the vessels, the channels in which the blood is flowing, the blood vessels, they increase in, their diameter. So more blood rushes into them, and that what leads to a reddish tinge while blushing or anger.
Ma'am, Ma'am, you said ma'am that ma'am shells are mostly translucent, ma'am. And the best example is ma'am when we shine torch through our hand, ma'am.
Yeah. But yeah, so there you see some red glow, which is mainly coming from
Ma'am, blood, ma'am.
blood, yeah, and some tissue also, yeah. Has anyone attempted to draw their favorite microscopic view yet? Would you like to turn on your video and share with us? No one gave that a try? See, I've drawn microscopic view here, 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 here. I showed you an actual microscopic view here and here as well. This is also a microscopic view.
Ma'am, it is a photo, ma'am.
I have drawn
Ma'am,
it.
I have drawn one.
I have drawn. Please share, no? All right. Thank you. I can see hexagonal plant cells.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. All right. And anyone else try?
Ma'am,
Hmm.
ma'am, I have a question.
Tell me, Ashita.
Ma'am, are there particular colors the chameleon will change, like orange to green?
Hmm. So, like, yeah, it is defined particularly. For example, this chameleon this is from, I think, the Madagascar island, the one that I've drawn here. So it can change color from like yellow to orange. And it's not like it will suddenly become magenta or purple or black. So, but there are certain lizards which might change their color from orange to black. So it's defined, like state 1 and state 2 are defined, like what you can start with and what you can change to is defined. It's not state 1 to any state. So if you go back on the other direction in the circle. So this is all very defined. It's not like they can go anywhere on the color wheel. Yeah. And each species, each variety has its own setup. Maybe they can go to orange, from orange to blue. Maybe they go from red to green. Maybe they go from blue to red. But it's predetermined. Yeah. Like it's defined.
Ma'am,
Hmm.
ma'am, the previous page, ma'am, you have shown ma'am, the difference of light and the color, ma'am.
I'm so glad you
Ma'am, that
asked this.
ma'am, in the Venn diagram, ma'am, you have mixed ma'am blue and green and red, it becomes white, ma'am, and then you have mixed yellow and violet and green, ma'am, it becomes black, ma'am. That have ma'am, I am very confused, ma'am. And when I tried to mix the colors, ma'am, it become blacks. But when I mixed different type of translucent colors, ma'am, it becomes white.
No, no. So this is not to do with translucent color or colors. So light, you literally think in terms of say torches or bulbs. So how light behaves and how pigment behaves is very different. For example, in the structural colors that we talked about, it will mostly be about light because there is no pigment there. Whereas in the fish and the chameleon that fish and the octopus we spoke about, will be about color. So uh, if you take, blue and red of cellophane papers and you put them on torch with white bulb, and then you try this activity, you will see that at some point it feels like it's disappeared. You just see a glow. So light behaves differently from pigment. If you have a poster color box, you can certainly try the one with on the right, which is about color. And if you have access to 3 torches with white bulb and cellophane paper, you can try that. You can see some real life demos also online. Uh, so the idea is that mixing light is different from mixing pigments. So sometimes we often confuse light with pigment. So light is what makes the pigment visible, but sometimes you will see color even if there is no pigment, because the object has a surface, the object has some property which changes how light is being reflected or refracted from it. For example, the bottommost panel again, if you have no color also, the light is getting scattered and some of it is enriched in blue, and in the other direction it is enriched in red, and so on. So what we see is not only a property of the pigment, but is also a property of the surface of that object, which is affecting what is happening to the light. And then light on, if different lights get mixed, suppose if blue and red are scattered in the same direction and green in a different direction, then I will look at it as purple. And if I go to the other direction, then I will look at it as yellow. So, sorry, green. Yeah. Hope that clarifies something, or at least encourages you to think more about it. Both of those options are equally acceptable to me. Did anyone else try drawing? All right. So I'll thank you for being a patient listener. And I also want to thank my postdoc lab, people in my postdoctoral fellowship, which is from Minat Sirajuddin lab at INSTEM. Um, and for you, to you for being a kind and patient and inquisitive audience.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Thank
miss.
you, ma'am.
Right. Um, is somebody from the Regional Science Center here right now?
I'm there, madam.
Yeah. I'm done. In case you have any other announcements to make or something to say.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Now, I request the participants. Actually, I could listen. Very few were interacting, but what about others? If they are interested to ask some more questions to madam, then you are free to ask your questions to madam before we leave the meeting. Few more minutes left behind with us. So, students and teachers, if somebody is interested to ask, please ask.
Thanks, Ashita.
I do have one more question, madam, on my part.
Sure, please.
As far as you know, the color of the birds are concerned,
Mm.
this is spectacular.
Yes. So in birds, actually, like in fish, what you have is the structural colors, which are inside filled with pigments. So in the fish and in the octopus, we saw that the pigment was inside the cell. But in birds, the pigment is secreted from the skin and it goes to the feather, and it then arranges and lodges itself in those reflective mirror kind of structures, and that is what leads to a tremendous diversity of colors. So that's why they have colors which are rare. They have purples and they have a lot of blues, they have stark white and they have stark black, which is very difficult to achieve with pigments. So I probably missed saying this, but uh, you know, there are only few pigments that are there in animal kingdom specifically. And so achieving a variety of colors requires combinations, like you have to mix a certain red with a certain yellow, or a certain yellow and red with a certain kind of structural element to get something like green or to get something like purple. So, and birds really have excelled at that in some ways. Yeah.
Yes, madam.
Thank
Madam, actually, truly speaking, can anybody repeat this behavior in a lab situation?
There are people who do try this, and there are people, who are trying to make fabrics for both fashion and for warfare, which reflect light in a certain way. There are people who are trying to build. In fact, a lot of work on camouflage was done during World War One and World War Two, because what happened was they realized that the armies need a certain kind of clothing. So the patchwork kind of cloth that you see for a lot of army men, army people, actually comes from there. And it was this person called Thayer who did this work about trying to understand bird behavior, in fact, and realized that the way they are colored is matching with their background. So if they want to hide, it's easy for them to hide. So, so that is the simplistic idea. But even now, a lot of people are creating artificial structural colors or trying to understand how structural colors are engineered to recapitulate that for uh, attaining maybe even invisibility. So these are the kind of things you would need to learn if you want to develop an invisibility cloak. How light works, how different structures reflect it, how can you place them in a way that from most angles it looks invisible. Yeah, so there are people who are attempting to do work in that direction.
And we know from history of science in India,
Hmm.
Indian Institute of Science, where you were studying, I think,
Hmm.
and got your PhD from, I think, from Indian Institute of Science. The biology department is really some excellency in form, na?
Thank you. Yeah, so there is a scientist there called Maria Thakur. She works in the Center for Ecological Studies, and she studies some lizards and both urban and wildlife style, and tries to understand how what to say, how they use color for aggression. So she studies some particular lizards which turn from they have a patch on their back, I would say, and which turns pale to orange. Yeah, so there are people who are studying some color there. Yeah.
And one more thing, I sometimes in doubt. We mostly observe the the artificial materials which are colored by man.
Hmm.
They fade up in course of time. Suppose you put them in the sun, and
Mm-hmm.
gradually they are fading,
Yeah.
and at a particular point of time they are colorless
Hmm.
mostly.
Yeah.
But you
So
see the birds and these animals, even if you put them in the sun, this coloration, the pigmentation, it does not fade away.
So what is happening there is that the pigment is getting destroyed at some rate, both inside the bird or some other animal, and also on our clothes. But because birds have an active mechanism which allows them to replenish that pigment, so the valence is maintained. If we take away those cells from them, then they will also fade away over time. Yeah.
Yes, and that happens in course of old age, I think.
Sometimes old age, and even sometimes even like we have certain coloration disorders. So you might see that like
Lip
some,
also.
sorry.
Lip.
Yeah,
Fusel.
leaf also. So leaf also, you see chlorophyll gets
Yeah.
destroyed, or
Fusel.
yeah.
Madam, you told about that octopus art. I know that actually female octopus actually larger than the male octopus. So
Yeah.
during mating time, no,
Hmm.
female octopus, the whatever sac like just balloon like elastic tissues are there, they extended and they make it more attractive. By that time, the different colors are coming. So
Hmm.
that after taking the male octopus, no,
Hmm.
so after mating, they ate away all the male octopus. I read one article.
Right. Nice. No, I didn't know about this particular
So
specific thing.
during
Thanks
that
for
time, it
sharing.
changes color
Mm-hmm.
because to
Yeah.
get attract to the male
Right.
octopus.
Yeah. So the ones that I know about, the male changes color. So actually, in most of the animal kingdom, the color change responsibility for attraction lies with the male.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, participants, on behalf of the participants,
Ma'am,
huh,
Hmm.
ma'am, I want to show the microscopic picture. I did it only with pencil.
Sure. Please show. Nice. I can see some parts of it. I can't see it completely, but thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Ma'am,
Yes.
do colors affect psychology?
Yes, I think they do, but that's a very different science. I can't, I won't claim to know psychology as much, but this I know for sure that colors do affect how we behave. Um, yeah, but how exactly does that work? I wouldn't be able to comment on. Yeah.
Ma'am,
Hmm.
ma'am, I have seen many astronauts who are wearing a different orange like suit when in the takeoff, ma'am, and when they are landing on other planets or in space, ma'am, they have worn a different white color kind of suit, ma'am. Why they are changing the colors of the suit, ma'am?
That I am sorry, I do not know the answer to this. I'm sure there is a logical reason for it, but I haven't thought about it. But that's a great question. I'll look up why that happens.
Okay.
Okay, all participants, now this is time to end the meeting, and hope you enjoyed to your expectations. But this time, now suppose we provide such type of opportunities in future, I hope you will take the advantage of the situation, because this time we invite experts from all over the globe. So the globalization effect is taking place on digital platforms. Thank you, madam. On
Thank
behalf
you so
of
much.
Regional Science Center, Odisha Began Academy, we thank you all. And thank you all participants, students, teachers, and dignitaries who are present here. Hope
Thank you.
we meet again. Thank you
Yeah.
all.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed interacting with
Yes,
the
yes, thank
students.
you, madam.
Yeah.
Exactly. The same here.